Welcome to Hip Hop Now Podcast. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here. Don't disrespect the legend. Hip hop is here to stay. Let's get right into the business. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast specifically designed to keep you caught up on all things hip hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Big shout out to the supporters over at patreon.com/hiphopnow, past and present. And if you're watching the video version of this podcast, you see those people's names scrolling at the bottom. Appreciate you. A lot of what I've done in recent years as far as equipment is due in part to them. And I have a couple of ideas to further increase the production of this podcast, not even just the output, but also the set. Because, you know, I do it from the garage, which is cool. You know, it's whatever, you know, it's just regular hip hop. But I have spaces in my home that would step up the set. You know, we just got to establish some few things, you know, and then we go from there. So first and foremost, I mean, we done had what probably will go down as one of the most epic hip hop battles of all time. I'm not saying it's the best, but considering not just the output of the songs, but the rollout, the social media, the back and forth, like hip hop was alive and breathing. Do not believe what Questlove says. He just scared. But me and the homie Tone from intothedome.com did a brand new episode of my side podcast from this one, my companion podcast called That Time in Hip Hop, which is about history and nostalgia and preservation of hip hop moments. We felt the need to make a new episode because Kendrick Lamar versus Drake was a moment in hip hop. Whether you like them or not, whether you feel there were better battles or, you know, they're better rappers now, whatever the case may be, you couldn't escape the conversation around it, which means it had impact and not just on hip hop heads. So check that out. If you're listening in audio form, it's available in audio form. And also the video is available here as well. I'll make sure I have a card pop up that you can click if you just want to head right over there to see what that's about. Or when you finish this video, it'll be at the end of the video. So definitely check that out. Big shout out to hiphopdx.com. And that's it this week, because that's where I'm getting most of my news from. Shout out to them. Shout out to all the online publications that I use to source the news for hip hop. And, you know, and to basically narrow it down to me, what are the more important stories beyond, not beyond, but that focus specifically on the music and not antics outside of the music. Because honestly, you can go anywhere else for tabloid. But if you know, an album drop, which we got to talk about, that you may be interested in, and you kind of want to get you just want to hear somebody's opinion on it before you press play or before you buy it, I got you a little bit later. So with that being said, let's get right into the business. So, you know, Kendrick dropped Not Like Us. And then Drake dropped The Heart Part 6. And those were like literally the last two diss records. Most sensible hip hop heads who are just judging bars and not accusations knew when they heard Not Like Us, this battle is over. Now we all listened to Drake's response because, you know, it came in a timely fashion where you had to like, yo, well, let's see, maybe it's not over. But then in that, you know, came a lot of contradictions, and the overall consensus online was that this battle was over and Kendrick won, and it was a great fight and all of that. But the whole time that this stuff has been happening, there have been a couple of people who have nothing to do with this back and forth, trying to find their way into the conversation. Now, I don't take anything away from Rick Ross because he was a target of Drake. So, rightfully so, he responded within 2 hours, by the way, after Push-Ups came out. And he's the one who led the charge on hashtag BBL Drizzy, which is funny. Rick Ross videos on social media and him talking at the end of the diss record are all better than the actual diss record, and that's what makes it funny. So it was cool, right? He was a part of it because he was targeted, just like a couple of other people, like ASAP and all of that. One person who no one was thinking about. I mean, maybe I am because sometimes he put out some really dope albums that get slept on. Uh, but was the one person who constantly tries to insert themselves into things they shouldn't insert themselves into. And I know maybe that's pause, but what I'm saying is the game decided to have some disparaging words towards Rick Ross. I guess that's because he may feel some kind of way about what Kendrick is doing now, how he got the West Coast, but it would be foul to go at Kendrick in defense of Drake. So maybe he feels like, well, I'm going to support Drake by going at Rick Ross. We don't want to hear that. And you know why? For those who don't know, like, why wouldn't you want to hear from Game? He's a good rapper, right? Yeah. He's way better now to me than he was in his debut. I didn't like him on his debut. He was literally a name dropper. That's all he did. Like everything he said. Over the course of time, he's had some really dope albums where you have to give him credit, like the Red album, the 1992 joint. The 1992 album is criminally slept on. Doctor's Advocate, right? The double album he had, like he's had some really dope albums. He has a nice catalog, honestly. When it's all said and done, now he got some duds, but when it's all said and done, he has more positive on the hip hop side than anything. But the reason why his last album, I can't even remember what I liked about it because I was so annoyed by the fact that he was gunning for this Eminem battle that just seemed like it was coming out of thin air. And then, is that pause too? Come on, man. Y'all got to chill. And then the song was 10 minutes. And only people who really hate Eminem or really hate the conversation around Eminem was feeling it. But most people felt like, even if I don't like Eminem, what is Game doing? I don't even want to hear that. I don't even like him. Now, I like Game as a rapper. And this new song, which is entitled, I think it's called Freeway's Revenge, meaning Rick Ross got his name because Rick Ross named something like Hubert or something. I don't know. His real name is something else, like Anthony, something regular, right? But he took the Rick Ross name from a famous drug dealer from back in the 80s who the show's FX show Snowfall was based upon, right? Kind of based off upon his life, and he would be the Franklin character. But Rick Ross, the real Rick Ross, Ricky Ross, Freeway Ricky Ross, right? Because there's also a freeway, right? But Freeway Ricky Ross, he kind of was known for having like a bald head and a beard, like a big beard. So Rick Ross kind of, co-opted everything from the name to the beard, the bald head, all of that. And what Game is doing on this song. Well, let me just say this. Well, let's just get to some bars. Well, okay, I'm losing myself. I think it's a dope record because again, I like Game. I like Game. I like the track. I like the way he rhyming. I like the wittiness of it. It's just that we didn't ask you to come out of the woodworks and start dissing people. It's a clear cry for attention, given the fact the entire West Coast is jumping based off of the Not Like Us song that Kendrick has out. It's just really showing these emotional cats can't keep still. They can't. And they be the first one to say they have haters. But with that being said, I kind of wish this song wasn't a diss record. It was just about anything else with the same performance, with the same wittiness, because I think it's really dope. But I hate the fact that it's a diss record. So I didn't really want to hear much of it after I listened the first time. But here's a couple of bars for y'all. And I quote, U12 lemon pepper wings from a heart attack. Academics give this N-word an Ozempic starter pack. See, I like stuff like that. It's dope. This ain't the Kendrick beef. My Drake sings songs. Shots ring out. The neighbor better have his ring on. Let me see if there's some other ones over here. And this was aimed at is this aimed at gunplay? Yeah. Your baby mama told me you like to get peed on. You are CO. That's the last time you had keys on. I like that one. And we know you treat gunplay like he a peon, and he knows some ish that ain't cool for him to speak on. Now, again, if he wasn't so annoying throughout his career when it came to attention seeking, and this was a actual beef and there was a clear line to us, like knowing what's the situation between him and Rick Ross, then it would be par for the course. Yeah, you're gonna diss each other. But it clearly just looked to me like he didn't like all the Rick Ross jokes about Drake and his money. And he tweeted, he said, "It's always the fat N word with skinny legs talking ish." And that's just telling me he's just scrolling through, he's just watching this whole situation, and he's thinking, how can I get involved? BBL Drizzy, I got you. I'm gonna get at this Wingstop cat, right? Which is so stupid because when you say that, like Rick Ross has a lot of money probably because of his investments, which includes Wingstop. Like Wingstop, I don't care where you're from. Maybe you're from Montana or something like that. No disrespect to Montana, but I'm just saying. And Wingstop was it. But most people didn't really know about Wingstop until they started to pop up and Rick Ross, right? Lemon pepper. And when and I'm gonna just speak for us black folk. When we tasted the lemon pepper wings, we was like, yeah, this the new spot to go to. And I'll say, because I live in the suburbs now, yeah. That's what education and success look like. You know, I'm sorry. I love where I come from, but we were poor. And I ain't rich. But what I will tell you is what I don't expect. I expect this in the hood, right? Go to the Wingstop, it's crazy. I expect that. But here in the suburbs, especially on the weekend, that parking lot is crazy in front of the Wingstop. So to like slander, I get it, the Wingstop, Rick Ross, but sometimes it's difficult when you're already being desperate with entering yourself into a battle that had nothing to do with you, or a beef, like some people like to say, that had nothing to do with you. And we know Rick Ross definitely got more money than you. You're gonna try to slander the investments and say heart attack when Rick Ross lost all this weight, and like, yeah, he's still a big dude, but he ain't the dude he used to be. I think people forget how big he actually used to be. So at the end of the day, again, you press play on the song, it ain't bad at all. It's just really what Game does, right? He's always looking for a way to create hype around whatever, you know, maybe he got an album coming or whatever, but or just around himself, to get a bag or whatever it is. And it just comes off really corny. And sometimes I think it does more harm to his career because, again, when I go and tell people the albums he has that are fire, they just think about him and the name dropping and just the thirstiness, and they don't even want to listen. And I'm telling them like, yo, 1992 is an incredible album from this dude. It's damn near perfect. It's like a classic. Damn near perfect. But some people don't want to press play because of who it is and his pedigree and what people know of him. And here he is again. Right? Nobody remembers that Eminem diss. Nobody said, yo, this ranks like top 10. Nobody cares. Only people, we only cared when he had to break up with G Unit. That was probably the only time we cared about the back and forth and the dissing. And even when him and Joe Budden was going back and forth, like that was the era where we really cared. Now it just feels like he does it for attention, and it's pretty clear. So LL Cool J recently did an interview, and he talked about Andre 3000 specifically, saying how put the flute down. Now, I'm not quoting him, but put the flute down, get with Big Boy, and make another Outkast album. That's what we want. And to that, I say, yes, that's what we want. And the other people who were there in this interview, and actually, I think it was the joint, the shop, where I think that's LeBron James's show, like roundtable situation in a barbershop kind of sort of setting, or at least the chairs are something like that. I don't know. But at the end of the day, there were people who were kind of defending the Flute album. No, I like it. I meditate to that. Here's what happens, and this is, to me, this is what the problem is when I see people arguing about that because of who it is. Andre 3000 can make a Flute album if he wants. He can make 10 of them if he wants. That's a totally different genre of music. If you can't remove yourself from thinking that's a rapper and trying to listen to him play a flute as if it's him reciting verses, you're just never going to be happy, because that's just nonsense. That's madness. Why would you even think that? Like, this man, I made a flute album. If you don't want to hear Andre 3000 playing the flute, do not press play. If you want to hear him rapping, go back and listen to Outkast. And that's the problem. A lot of times people like, why would you press play on something you're not going to like? Because that's not what you want. And I remember right before the Flute album dropped, I listened to an interview with Andre 3000, and he talked a lot about anxieties, and a lot of those being tied to meeting expectations musically as hip hop and having something to say. And he just didn't feel like he had inspiration in regards to hip hop. Now, yeah, you may get inspired to write a verse here, a verse there, and stuff like that. I can relate to that. As a person who used to rap heavy and write rhymes back in the days, all the times, and make songs and all that. And I wasn't even trying to get a deal, but I was just into it that much. For me now, it's better to, like, every now and again write a verse or a song. And I can have a year that pass before I do that again, but it's really when the moment strikes you. So I get what he's saying, like, yo, I don't just want to do it because people feel like I need to do this album. But then once the flute stuff died down a little bit, he did another interview, Andre 3000, where he said that he would love to do another Outkast album, if, that inspiration is there. In a lot of ways, I think it is. I think him coming out with this album and hearing how so many people want him to come back to rapping, whether it's a solo album or an Outkast album, that once you see the admiration for what you've done, that may inspire you to do more, right? You're not going to convert the hip hop faithful to now listen to, atmospheric music, and what is it? Forget the term that was explained to me of what it was. It's almost like soundscaping, and like if you're playing Zelda and you're on a quest to get the blue flower, and you hear the flutes playing and all of that, right? And I think it's cool as the instrumental. And again, he can make as many as he wants. But at the end of the day, if and then we know it's there because we've heard some of your more recent verses in years. So you never, when you put pen to paper, you never sound whack. So I would think, what's wrong with one last Outkast album? And I think also the recent passing of Rico Wade may also push that into a reality, because I don't really believe in it. Like, don't block your blessing, and don't block your gift, because you may feel like, man, I love playing the flute. It's a spiritual situation for me. This is my calling. This is my blessing. But sometimes there's just things in life that hint towards you should do that. Even if it's once, you should do that. I think if you did it, and if you and Big Boy got together, you made some new music, the chemistry's there again, and then, the ideas start flowing. Then you do a tour where you get to perform not only music from this new album, but also your hits and all the love, because I get him dealing with some anxiety with all of that I just mentioned. But I think, like, when you think about, Andre, when's the last time you did a tour? I think it's a totally different audience now, bro. Like, I think the audience now, so they want to give you flowers so much that it may feel comfortable for you now. That's why it might be the right time. But again, Outkast, that is big expectations. Their album run is, I like to say, flawless, and I'm including Idlewild. I liked it. I think they just make great music, and considering Idlewild was the last thing that he did that wasn't as well received, I don't think that should have took you out of what you love doing for so long. So there are plenty of things you could talk about. Nas just did 6 albums. How, if you ain't inspired by that, I don't know what will. So we'll see. And lastly, this Friday, May 10th, I believe. If you're from the future, you know what to do. Get your ass out of here, man. You already heard these albums. Stop playing. Is a notable release date coming off of a battle with, for a newer generation. But there's 2 albums released today that kind of play really big into the nostalgia of an older generation. One with the newer artist who kind of keeps that boom bap feel alive, and another one, a legendary artist from the legendary group, the Wu-Tang Clan. The new artist being Conway the Machine with an album called Slant Face Killah. You get it? And Ghostface with his new record deal with Mass Appeal, and the lead single with Nas, Scar Tissue. The name of his new album is called Set the Tone, like in Tony Stark's 2 Face Killer albums today. And we're going to start with Conway. It was the album I listened to first. And again, I do 3. Yes, I listened to both of these albums 3 times in record time. Like, I just played them like back to back to back to back to back, from last night to the gym, everything until the point I recorded this. So 3 listens. First listen, impressions. Second listen, let me listen a little bit more deeply to this record, lyrics, and things like that, concepts. Third listen is just to confirm my thoughts. So the first one up, Slant Face Killah by Conway the Machine, features include Method Man, Stove God Cooks is on here, Key Glock, Swiss Beats. Don't get mad, it's not that bad. Bars. Tech Nine, Raekwon, which Raekwon, I don't believe he even rhymes. It's more of like a speech. It's a dope speech though. It's a Raekwon speech. What did he say? What he said? We the Golden Globes. Like what? But that's why we love the Woo, man. The album is clocks in around an hour and 6 minutes, and I'm not gonna hold you my overall opinion of it. I think it's good. I think it's good. I think oftentimes when it comes to Conway the Machine, you maybe like last year, won't he what he won't he do or whatever. At first my expectations were so high that I kind of didn't like it. I thought it was like, it's just a collection of songs. And then over time I wound up like loving it. And I think it was in my top 5 last year. This album starts off very strong, like very strong. And we heard some of these songs, right? Like with Cool and Dre and the other joint with Joey Badass. Uh the record Muddy with Stove God Cooks is just mad. It was mad dope. When I heard that one, I was like, oh, okay. That's what we doing, right? Give is a joint with Cool and Dre, which was crazy, like bars. The one with Method Man is crazy. Um, uh, Flea Lords on it, like that one's called Meth Back. And I think at some point this album takes a turn. And I think that turn will be the deciding factor for fans on how much they like this project. Because before that interlude, it's like, this might be top 5 of the year already. When that interlude hits, which is like an interlude in a song featuring Key Glock, and Key Glock is more like the kids today, right? With the sort of like the trap beats and stuff like that. So the beat is like that. And I was cool with it because Conway kind of in the last couple of projects, he's sort of always had one of those. So I was fine with it. Like, okay, here we go. Here's this one. But then after that, the music, like the energy, the momentum changes with this album. Whereas the boom bap beats and the features were crazy and all that, all up until the interlude. And it just felt like they used that interlude song as a way to separate one sound from the other. And not all the songs on the latter half sound like that, but it's just not as strong as how the album started. Like I like the song with Jay Worthy, but by the end, I was like, man, this is just not as good as how it started. Like I was really hyped in the beginning. Now, again, there's 14 tracks on here. That interlude doesn't really arrive until track 9. So the majority of the album I do like, and I like a couple of songs again on that back half. But even like the song Raw with Tech Nine, I didn't like the beat. And a lot of it had to do, and I started to think, like, why you pick this beat? And then I looked down on my phone and I was like, oh, because it's a Tech Nine kind of beat. I don't like stuff like that. Why get a beat like, oh, I'm gonna have Tech Nine on here, so let me get a Tech Nine style beat? Nah, man, just get a beat that's dope and let Tech Nine cook. You don't know what he gonna do with it. Don't give him like here's a Tech Nine style beat, and then now you have to adapt to it. It just felt off, and I don't know if that was the case or whatever. Tech Nine might have been like, yo, send whatever. I just know it was. I was looking at that skip button, y'all, like, how much long left on it? Oh, it's almost over. Okay, I'll let you live. So again, I think it's a good album. I don't think it's a great album or anything like that, but I think it's a good album. And I think time will tell how much I like it. But depending on what we get throughout the year, I could definitely see it being a part of the best albums. Not in my top 5, because the albums I currently have that would make my top 5, I think, are better than this. And it's questionable if that's Benny also. Because I started out with the Benny album kind of like, yeah. But now every time I go back to it, something feels right. So we'll see. Now, before we finish, let's get into the Ghostface album, Set the Tone, Guns N' Roses. That's what it's called. Set the Tone, Guns N' Roses. It's about 19 tracks, but also includes skits. It's about 53 minutes in length. Features include like Jim Jones, Sheik Luch, Raekwon, Ryman, Method Man, this new dude called Iceman. There's a couple of features, mostly singers on here. Ja Rule's on here, Fat Joe, Kanye West, Busta Rhymes is on here, Remy Ma's on here. A lot of features for a Ghostface album. And I know that scared some folks when they saw the track list. And it scared me because I was like, who is Trevor Jackson? Like, yo, he just got anybody on here. Right. And I figured, like, yo, these must be just a bunch of mass appeal people. They trying to like shoehorn in so that us Ghostface fans will discover these other cats. But really, it's a lot of singers. And for reasons I'll say. Now, right off the bat, what's my rating for this album? I really like it. I really like it, but I think it also suffers from the same exact thing I just said about Conway the Machine, because it starts off really strong, even with the features. And ironically, Scar Tissue featuring Nas is definitely my least favorite because all the other features feel like they fit. And I think with Ghostface and Nas, I think they need a different beat with a different feel. Maybe even something slower where, you know, they could really get into the bar. So I didn't really care for Scar Tissue that much, but it's not offensive. And again, when you're going through this album, and in this case, instead of it being an interlude that separates the music, it's like after skit 2, which is track 10 on the album, it turns into the club. And I don't even know if it's a club in 2024. It might be a club in like 1998, to be honest. And what I mean by that is, well, before we get to that, let me just give you a couple of highlights, right? I think the first track is cool with Jim Jones and Sheik Luch, but honestly, it kind of felt like a throwaway. And I think a solo Ghostface song should have been the first song you heard, because the first verse you hear, I mean, the first voice you hear on a Ghostface album is Jim Jones talking, even though Ghostface has the first verse. So that kind of had me kind of like, maybe this should have been a little bit lower in the track listing. It just doesn't feel like the first song. Pair Hammers with Method Man, crazy. This is everything you expected. Skate Odyssey with Raekwon, it's what they do. The singing on there is what it's the type of singing that would have been sampled on a Ray and Ghost song, right? So I think it fit the beat. Those two rhyming. I told you my thoughts on Scar Tissue. Kilo in the Safe with Iceman. I didn't mind it. I think that Iceman dude, I like him. He was dope, and he kind of fit with Ghostface. So I liked it a lot. No Face with Ghostface and Kanye was dope. My favorite probably right now is a song called Champion Sound, which has some dancehall, like a dancehall kind of hook. And the beat and the sample is familiar, but it's all Ghostface and it's dope. It's dope. It's definitely going in my Hip Hop Now podcast playlist for 2024, which I'll share as we get closer to June, when we start to talk about what are the best albums of the year so far, right? So again, like I said, with that second skit, the first skit is gold, right? You know, Ghostface starts out top dead alive cereals, and then he goes on to name a couple cereals. But after that second skit, we start to get Wizard of Poetry Ghostface. Now, if you don't know Ghostface's catalog like that, he put an album out called The Wizard of Poetry, something like that, which was geared towards the ladies. So, I had a lot of R&B singers on that. And even though all of the beats weren't necessarily like club songs or R&B sounding songs, because they really weren't, not all of them. That album to me is really good. Like, from songs like Stay and the other record he got with Fabulous, where Fabulous plays like this dude, I guess, that's sleeping with his woman and they doing a little acting. So it's dope. And Ghostface has always done uh well over R&B sounding things. He's never sound out of pocket. But this is the most I've ever heard on a Ghostface album that included so much boom bap. It is probably a deal breaker for a lot of people. For me, it's fine, but it kind of got worse as it went on, right? Like Plan B, which is the 11th track on here, I was like, okay, Ghost talking to the ladies, I get it. Then track 12, which featured Ja Rule, I was like, okay, we going back to the well again? I don't know if I like this one, but cool. This is probably the first song I really don't like. Locked In with AZ, I was like, okay, Ghost and AZ over this style beat. I hear it. But and it's tough to say, right? Because AZ and Ghost were out back then. And I can't say, well, this sounds like something that should have came out back then. But if they record together now, well, what should it sound like today? But this. So I think me liking it was more so like nostalgia, like, yeah, this is how I like to hear AZ over these tracks, which is true, and Ghost. So I kind of like that record. Then another skit hit. Then things kind of go off the rails because Ghost has a song called Touch You, and I'm like, oh, we still whining and dining. All right. Then the next song with Busta Rhymes, and I'm gonna blame and Serrani. I'm gonna blame Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes put out that whack album, Block. Okay, it wasn't that whack, but whack for Busta album, Blockbuster, where he did all these different sounds, and he loved to do the dance hall sound and all of that, and that's fine. I just when I listened to Blockbuster by Busta Rhymes, I was like, this just isn't for me. I'll wait for the Busta that I know to return. But you just don't expect to hear this on a Ghostface album. There's nothing I could think of that remotely sounds like this ever in Ghostface's career. But then I press play on a song called Trap Phone. And it's literally a trap record with Ghostface not sounding good over the beat. I don't care what you say. I don't care how many albums he released. We love him. He got classics, but we can critique him. And it doesn't always have to be positive just because of who he is. The song was terrible. I didn't get through it. I skipped. I don't care what you say. It's one thing because somebody like, oh, when Nas did it, just go back and listen to them King's Disease trap songs. Them songs was hot. Okay, they were. So maybe that's the case. Maybe you need a Hit Boy to come in and say, yo, do this, because it just didn't sound good to me. It sounded like somebody said, yo, you gotta do one to, get them kids. Maybe Nas told him that, yo, you gotta get one of them in there, to get them kids. And Ghostface is not a dummy. He like, yo, okay, I'll try it. He tried. Then there's the outro. And then there's the song Yup with Remy Ma, which really feels like it has the same formula as his song with Jadakiss Run, but it's not as good. So overall, I think if you like Ghostface, you're gonna like a lot of the songs on here because I know I like more than I don't like. I just think towards the end, like I said with the Conway record, the momentum is lost. And I feel like considering 19 tracks and 4 skits, the skits were cool, so you could have kept them, but you probably could have dropped about 4 songs and made this a solid album. That's it, just 4 songs. It would have been a nice package of an album, but I don't know what the goal was with those, and please don't make any videos for those. Like, make video with the one with AZ, right? That still has that feel, but I just was I couldn't believe it because I was smiling listening to that first half of the Ghostface, and when the second half hit, I was like, oh, I don't know about this. So there you have it. Have you heard Conway the Machine's new album, Slant Face, or did you listen to Ghostface's new album, Set the Tone, or maybe listen to both? Leave your review of both albums in the comment section below. Please know that you can get this podcast in audio form wherever you get your podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, but also now on YouTube. You can watch the video. You can hit that like button. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers, and right now we're at 430. We only need 70 now, y'all. We ain't got that far to go. So the best thing to do is, if you aren't already subscribed, which most people who watch videos on YouTube for some reason don't subscribe, even if they like it. If you like a lot of these videos, subscribe to the channel. Stay locked in. Hit that like button. But most importantly, share it with people you know would also enjoy this kind of hip-hop content. Until next time, y'all, I'm not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.